So a week of whiplash. Markets now in the red. The severest tariffs still paused. China tariffs higher than first thought. President Trump holding a meeting with his entire cabinet at the White House earlier today, where they are saying it's all good.
We had a big day yesterday. There'll always be transition difficulty, but we had in history, it was the biggest day in history, the markets. So we're very happy with the way the country's running.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. After all the uncertainty, still a lot of it, really. The Dow falling over 1,000 points, down more than 2%. The NASDAQ down 4%. The S&P 500 down 3.5% today. The president's former chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, joins me to break down what's real, what's noise. Are the tariffs a policy blueprint or a negotiating tactic? And who to listen to from here on out? Plus, a live look at Capitol Hill, where House Republicans approved the framework for the president's so-called One Big Beautiful Bill. Speaker Johnson taking a victory lap.
We are going to provide stability, and we're going to send this message to all of our allies and friends around the world, and to our adversaries as well, that America is back.
And should lawmakers be banned from stock trading? Why there is a call for an investigation tonight. Plus, a live look at that helicopter crash in the Hudson River just hours ago. We will take you there live with the very latest. Our Nancy Liu is at the Port of Los Angeles tonight as the trade war on China ramps up. But we begin tonight here on the Hill at the White House with our Robert Sherman, where the president doubled down today on his latest tariff announcement. Robert?
Yeah, hey there, Blake. As Wall Street comes down from its Wednesday rally, a showdown has been created between China and the U.S. Tariffs on Chinese goods now standing at 145%. That's a 20% fentanyl tariff in addition to a 125% reciprocal tariff. But as the president ups the ante, China says, bring it on. Their foreign ministry spokesperson putting out a statement that reads, quote, "We are Chinese. We are not afraid of provocations. We don't back down." The president remaining confident a deal with the Chinese can be struck, saying at a cabinet meeting today that he has great respect for President Xi Jinping of China. Meanwhile, for those other dozens of countries looking for a deal, the president saying he expects things to move quickly.
Well, I think it's very close, but, we have to have a deal that we like. We don't want a deal that's going to be a bad deal, or I could make every deal in one day if I wanted to.
In the wake of the president's announcement, reciprocal tariffs will be paused for 90 days. The EU has chosen to pause their counter tariffs on American steel and aluminum as they remain hopeful a deal with the United States can be struck. Blake?
Our Robert Sherman, live at the White House tonight. Robert, thank you. So with China now, the 145% tariffs are already impacting businesses. A shipping shakeup in the works, as ports here in the U.S. now bracing for significantly less cargo coming from China. The South China Morning Post, for example, says Chinese exporters are ditching shipments mid-voyage to avoid President Trump's tariffs. Now, last year, the United States imported some $439 billion in goods from China. Some of the top imports include electrical equipment, machinery, toys, plastics, and furniture. Now that companies are cutting back on shipping, this will certainly impact the economies of both the U.S. and China. So what does it mean for American shoppers? Our Nancy Liu live at the Port of Los Angeles, the busiest container port in the Western Hemisphere. Nancy?
Well, Blake, while Chinese ships are turning around, we do have ships coming in. This one behind me came in this morning from Taiwan, which typically brings in a lot of electronics to the United States. Looking ahead, though, container freight bookings, they are down by an estimated 25%, especially on Asian routes. And due to canceled orders for Chinese goods, freight traffic is expected to drop even more here along the West Coast. With a huge Trump administration bullseye on China and a tariff rate of 145% now, there's a major upheaval in the supply chain. Amazon reportedly canceled significant orders on new inventory from China and other Asian countries, things like beach chairs and air conditioners. Check this out. Here at the Port of Los Angeles, clear signs of an import surge coming to a dramatic end. While volume is up by over 23% this week, there's a sharp drop-off in goods arriving next week. And then look, after that, a significant cliff as volume dives by more than 17%. U.S. retailers pivoting for their future inventory, like this outdoor store in Portland, which has about 80% of its products made in China. And Apple reportedly flew in plane loads of iPhones recently to avoid tariffs ahead of the hikes, and many American consumers also upgrading early, anticipating major price hikes. Now, California Governor Gavin Newsom, he's been very outspoken on all of this. He's issued another statement last night. He's urging countries to trade and do business with California independently. Blake?
All right, Nancy Liu live for us on the West Coast tonight. Nancy, thank you. So Amazon, of course, one business offering some insight into the impact of tariffs. Consider these two headlines for a second. As Nancy just mentioned, Amazon cancels orders from China after steep tariffs, plans $15 billion U.S. expansion. But also Amazon CEO Andy Jassy says he believes sellers will impasse increased tariff costs onto the consumers. So are the tariffs working as intended to bring manufacturing back, or will they raise prices? President Trump speaking about China today in the cabinet meeting.
They've really taken advantage of our country for a long period of time. They've ripped us off beyond anybody.
Joining me now is the Democratic Congressman of Illinois, Raja Krishnamurthy. He is the top Democrat on the Select Committee on Strategic Competition between the U.S. and China. Congressman, thanks for being back with us tonight. Always nice to see you, sir.
Thank you, Blake.
So you know this, but for our viewers watching us here on NewsNation or listening to us on SiriusXM, you called for an investigation into China just last month. You wrote a letter to Pam Bondi, Kristi Noem, and the trade rep, Jamieson Greer. So I want to hear from your perspective, Congressman, what you think President Trump got right with China and what you think he missed on China. Let's start with where you think he's right.
Well, I think he was right in his first term, where he used strategic tariffing with regard to certain industries that are practicing economic aggression, such as dumping, where, basically companies in China are charging less than even the cost of producing the goods and then selling those goods abroad to destroy their competition and monopolize markets. So think of glass, paper, steel, aluminum, electric vehicles, and so forth. Okay. President Biden then adopted those tariffs as well.
Kept them all. Yep.
What is going wrong, however, are blanket tariffs. Okay, where you have blanket tariffs on everything from, diapers to sneakers to, consumer items, which are not necessarily strategic in nature and ones where it's not clear that there's economic aggression. And the reason why that's a problem is, A, we're not really focusing our tariffs on those areas where we want to see a behavioral change. And then B, we're increasing prices on hardworking Americans across the board, and in effect, putting a big tax on them. And my constituents are calling me now nonstop, especially small business people, basically saying, look, my input prices are skyrocketing. My orders are drying up. I can't pass them along to consumers.
Where are you going to work with Pam Bondi, Kristi Noem, Donald Trump, Jamieson Greer, Scott Bessent, et cetera, going forward? How do you think you will?
I think where we need to work with them is, again, refocusing on those industries where there's economic aggression and making sure that somehow those particular practices are stopped so that we can level the playing field. And then finally, we can't impose blanket tariffs on our friends, partners, and allies. That's a horrible situation.
Congressman, the president again said today, he said, we would love to be able to work out a deal with China. All we are doing is resetting the table. Do you believe that the end goal here should be to work out a trade deal with China? The president did get a phase one deal in the first term. Or do you believe that the end goal here essentially should be to try to box him in or box him out?
Well, remember, the phase one deal didn't work out so well. The Chinese did not fulfill their promises.
Right. That's why I wonder if you think a trade deal is the end goal here, or it's to sort of reshift the global map and sort of box China out.
Well, I think that if we can actually get to a deal that that can stick, that would be great.
Okay.
But to do that, Blake, you can't engage in a trade war with Canada, Mexico, and your friends, partners, and allies. It has to be an international coalition, essentially, that basically puts down the international rules of the road on trade for China.
Okay. Raja Krishnamurthy, top Democrat on the China Select Committee, with us tonight here on the Hill. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again soon. Congressman, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Blake.
You got it. So the president's White House, including his Treasury Secretary, said this was all part of a strategic plan. But the president said his decision to pause some tariffs for 90 days was influenced by jitters over the market, especially the bond market. And hours before the president announced the pause, Wall Street executives Jamie Dimon and Bill Ackman both warned of a potential recession. They are now being credited for potentially swaying the president. Stocks shot up, but today markets took another dive the other direction, paring back many of Wednesday's gains. The president saying today, when asked about it at least midday, that he's not watching.
Well, I haven't seen it because I've been here for 2.5 hours, so I'll be saying it.
Now, one thing we know, trade negotiations are not over. There are a lot of people in the presidency here and a lot of data points to consider as the deals potentially move along. Mick Mulvaney is the president's former chief of staff, NewsNation contributor, joins me now here on the Hill. Hello, sir.
Hello, Berman.
Who should we be listening to?
Donald Trump, first and foremost. But if you're looking beyond that, I think right now Scott Bessent has a great deal of sort of sway inside the Oval Office. But face it, if you're going to look at one place, it would be the bond market.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, Trump tells the truth. When you stop and listen to him, he said he was watching the bond market, and he saw Jamie Dimon on television
Wednesday morning.
So I think I believe that. I don't believe this was a plan from the beginning. I don't think it makes any difference. But I think if you're looking forward, I wouldn't be listening to Peter Navarro. I'd be listening more to Scott Bessent, and I'd be watching the bond market and to a lesser extent the equity market.
So here's the thing, because as you mentioned, the president did mention that he was watching the bond market. And whatever it is, thing X, fill in the blank, it doesn't matter. If we now know that the president was watching that and then made a reversal on a signature policy move the very next day, shouldn't I be watching that thing, which in this case is the bond market? Like, that's one goalpost, and the other goalpost is conversations on trade deals. Is that where we are?
Absolutely. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having metrics or barometers to measure.
I'm not saying it is.
Exactly.
I'm just saying those might be the goalposts.
And, people who can't change their mind can't change anything, as the saying goes, right? So, but I would absolutely be watching the bond market, and we'll watch it for the next 90 days. The next question is 90 days going to be enough? And I'm like, let's wait and see how many deals they cut and how the markets react to that. Today was not a good day. Today was not a good day for the equities market. There's no question about it. There has been some damage done that didn't get fixed yesterday. So I think the Trump administration, the ball's in their court now to sort of send the message that things really are back to normal.
So when you were being asked, Mick, what should we do here over the next 3 months? Because 90 days is a short term.
Yeah, it's a long time.
But it's also a long time, right?
Long time.
What would you tell folks tonight who are just simply trying to figure all this out?
Watch the markets, because the administration clearly does. Listen to Scott Bessent. I think he's probably the leading voice right now. And I think we've put to bed, you and I have talked a lot over the last couple of weeks. Well, I guess, goodness gracious, it's only been a week and a day since Liberation Day, right? Yeah. But about what was the purpose of the tariffs? Were they meant to be permanent for the purpose of rebuilding the industrial base, or were they meant to be leveraged? And I think that has been put to bed. I think now they are leveraged. I think the White House is all in on negotiating bespoke, tailor-made trade deals. This is not the world of tariffs forever for the purpose of rebuilding the manufacturing base.
Mick Mulvaney, thank you, sir.
Good seeing you in a little bit.
Catch you here later in the show. Appreciate it. All right, so still to come tonight here on The Hill. The latest out of New York City, a helicopter crashing into the Hudson River. We are live with the details there. Plus,
President Trump's promises will be fulfilled, and we're really excited that today we took a big step in getting that done.
the House taking a big step, as you heard there from Mike Johnson, paving the way today for the president's so-called one big, beautiful bill. So what could that mean for your bank account or that government service that you rely on? And what happens next? And from budget fights to the back nine, the Masters now underway. How the biggest shot so far came from the smallest competitor. We're back here on the other side of the break.
Thanks for listening to NewsNation on the Go. I'm Leland Vittert. We're here for you 24/7 on the NewsNation app, or just say, Alexa, play NewsNation.
Breaking news out of New York tonight. A helicopter has crashed into the Hudson River between New Jersey and Manhattan. Our Caitlin Becker is live there near the scene with the very latest tonight. Caitlin?
Blake, we're just getting an update from law enforcement about this tragedy. 6 people on board this tour helicopter have perished. All 6 of them died. They were recovered from the water earlier today. It was a tour helicopter that was basically doing a loop around the Manhattan skyline. The pilot was on board, as well as what sounds like a family of 5. They were visiting from Spain, 2 adults and 3 children. Now, shortly after 3 p.m. today, Eastern time, the helicopter just sort of lost control over the water. The 911 calls came in describing that it sort of broke apart in the air. That's what we saw on social media. And then law enforcement says it landed inverted in the water. Now, first responders were on the scene within minutes. NYPD and fire department divers took to the water. They recovered all 6 bodies, 4 of which were pronounced dead on the scene. 2 others were taken to local area hospitals and then pronounced dead, Blake. So a really tragic day here. Now, next of kin still has not been informed of this tragedy, so we're not learning the names of any of the victims, but that's to come. And a multi-agency investigation is now underway to figure out what on earth caused this tragic accident. Blake?
Our Caitlin Becker live in New York tonight. Caitlin, thank you. Joining me now is Brant Anderson. He's a former Army helicopter pilot, retired U.S. Army captain. Brant, always nice to see you. Sorry it's under these conditions. Of course, you used to train on these helicopters. Of course, we don't know what happened here. Right. You know the helicopter, though. What's your best guess tonight?
No, thanks, Blake. Great to be with you, but terrible circumstances, of course. We'll have to see how the investigation plays out. But something that these helicopters are prone to is a situation called mass bumping. Mass bumping is when a pilot puts the aircraft into a stressful position that actually creates enough strain on the rotor system to break it apart from the aircraft. It can contact the tail rotor, separate the tail rotor, and we'll see what the investigation reveals, but this is a reliable aircraft. The Bell 206 has flown thousands of millions of hours.
You see these all the time over New York City.
Correct. But in a situation like this, it was a cloudy day. Perhaps you got into the clouds and immediately pushed the aircraft forward. If you do that with enough strain, you can create this situation where the aircraft, the rotor system separates from the aircraft.
Back here in Washington, there was a much different scene today. Right. 2 planes hitting each other down on the ground, and a bunch of lawmakers were on one of those planes. They basically clipped each other, the wings, right?
That's right.
How does you say that's right? Like it's casual, but how does that happen?
Well, it does. It happens when these aircraft are moving. They're moving in and out of gates. Okay. They're in close proximity to one another. Ground crews are trained to keep these aircraft separated from one another. But if they're moving too fast and they think they have enough space, they think they have enough clearance, they don't. And now we've got people live tweeting it, so we know each step of the way.
Yeah. So put up one of the posts if you can, because there were members of Congress who were on this plane. Here's Congressman Nick LaLota. Serving in Congress has come with some once-in-a-lifetime experiences, like just now. While stationary on the runway at DCA, another plane just bumped into our wing.
So it's obviously a situation they can't fly at that point. They need to inspect the wing, make sure there's no damage, or if there was any damage, get that repaired. So it's an inconvenience for everyone involved. But this is, again, it's something where ATC and the ground crews are working hand in glove, trying to move as many airplanes as quickly as possible. But sometimes accidents just happen.
All right. Brant Anderson, good to see you, sir.
Blake.
Thanks for coming in tonight.
Thanks,
Appreciate it. All right, still much more ahead here on the Hill. A House divided, for now at least. The president's agenda clears a big hurdle up on Capitol Hill. So does this mean things like no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime are next? Our Joe Khalil joins me live with where that stands. Plus, market manipulation or just pure coincidence? The one social media post from the president that has now cast a spotlight on Congressional stock trading. We're back in a few here on the Hill.
You're listening to The Hill on NewsNation's audio stream. Available 24/7 on the NewsNation app. Or just say, Alexa, play NewsNation.
Just about 6:30 here in our nation's capital, a live look at the White House and Capitol Hill, where House lawmakers gave the Trump administration a major win today. The House narrowly passing the Senate's budget blueprints, 216 to 214. What does all that mean? Well, it now paves the way for President Trump's quote-unquote one big beautiful bill, as he puts it, which includes $4.5 trillion in tax cuts and more spending for things like border security and defense. It will also add somewhere in the area of $5 trillion in federal government debt over the next decade. Those are the projections. Now, the president taking a victory lap today during the cabinet meeting.
We're well on our way to getting, as we call it, the great big beautiful bill. It's a beauty. There's never been a bill like this one. We're trying to get it all into one beautiful bill. I think we're going to be in very good shape.
Our Joe Khalil, live from Capitol Hill all day, up here with me now. Hello, Joe.
Hey.
So here's the way that I sort of put this, right? This is like saying, okay, I'm going to spend X on rent, Y on a lease, and Z on a vacation. That's the framework.
Yep.
Now you got to go figure out where you're going to live, what car you're going to buy, when you're going on vacation, where and how long.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where they are.
So these are where the hard decisions start, because the headline is going to be President Trump and Speaker Mike Johnson, big win. They move forward with the big, beautiful bill. But you're right. The hard stuff starts now. The framework allows for, as we mentioned in the intro here, $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, but that is necessitated on $1.5 to $2 trillion in spending cuts. That was the big fight. So now the work starts. What do you cut? How do you get to $1.5 trillion? Those are going to be the fights, the potentially points of tension, and filling in all the blanks.
Yeah, and so to be clear, this is the no tax on. This is extending the tax cuts.
Yep.
No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and on down the line that the president promised on the campaign trail.
All of the ideas that he put forward as it relates to taxes, these House Republicans who originally were not going to vote for this bill, the Chip Roys and the Freedom Caucus,
very conservative,
right? They said you don't get your tax cuts unless we get our spending cuts, and they were firm on that. They did not give in to pressure, not even from the White House, until they got guarantees that this is how it's going to go. So here we are. Let's see in the next couple of days and weeks what the actual math actually looks like. Where are you going to live? What car are you going to buy, for your example?
You're going to need the pen, paper, and the calculator, because this is going to take some time. Joe Khalil, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. All right, so while Congress was debating whether or not to move forward with delivering on the president's big, beautiful bill, as he put it, Democrats demanding an investigation into this statement by President Trump yesterday. Just hours before the president announced his 90-day tariff pause, he posted this on Truth Social saying, "This is a great time to buy," and he signed his initials, DJT. Now, his official announcement later sparked a market surge, but one of the president's top political rivals, the Democratic Senator Adam Schiff of California, is now demanding an investigation.
The question is, who knew what the president was going to do? And did people around the president trade stock knowing the incredible gyration the market was about to go through?
All right, now as it relates to congressional stock trading, that has been the center of debate for years. At least half a dozen bills have been introduced to ban or restrict members of Congress from playing in the market, buying and selling stocks, really. But nothing has become law. Right now, legislators are governed by the Stock Act of 2012 that requires members of Congress to report any trades worth more than $1,000 within 45 days. Only one congressperson has reported trades since President Trump's tariff announcement on April 2nd, 8 days ago. That is the Georgia Republican, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. She has been disclosing trades basically within 2 to 3 days, despite the 45-day period allowing to report trading. Now, in terms of total trading volume, the Congresswoman came in at just over $1 million, putting her well behind the New Jersey Democrat Josh Gottheimer, who led the way. And according to stock tracker Quiver Quantitative, his trades have totaled some $75 million in 2024. By the way, Democrat Nancy Pelosi was second, just shy of $40 million. Now, from required public filings, Marjorie Taylor Greene made 19 trades in the 2 days after April 2nd. All were purchases between $1,000 and $15,000. The Congresswoman purchasing stock in major tech companies like Amazon, Dell, and Apple. She also invested in Lululemon, UPS, FedEx. Now, stocks that have gained the most for Greene include Restoration Hardware, Lam Research, and Dell. Stocks that have declined include Nike and Lululemon. With me now, Nick Mulvaney, back with us once again, former congressman, by the way, and Adam Hodge, former communications director over at the DNC. Hello to you both.
Hey, man.
This became a thing because Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said any member of Congress who purchased stock in the last 48 hours should probably disclose that now, Nick.
Let me give quickly both sides of it, okay? Insider trading is illegal. It was illegal for members of Congress before the Stock Act. It's illegal now. There was a 60 Minutes piece out about 10 years ago that suggested it wasn't illegal. It's absolutely illegal. That being said, there is a law that said that when I was in the executive branch, I could not trade individual equities. Congress passed that law, so they made a different rule for everybody else in the government that applies to them. So, look, I think they should stop because it just looks wrong. Any lawyer who's watching this knows there's a principle called the appearance of impropriety.
It doesn't pass the smell test.
It doesn't look good. It's not illegal, but they shouldn't be doing it.
And especially at moments with this much volatility in the market, people are going to start asking who knew what when.
Yeah.
That you saw that in 2008 with the financial crisis. You saw that during the COVID pandemic when you had fluctuations in the market. This happens from time to time, and I think members of Congress should do what most, and in the administration we had to do. You put it in a blind trust. You have no idea what's happening.
It's not even a blind trust. You could buy widely held mutual funds, for example. You can still participate. It's not necessarily a blind trust, but you're absolutely right. There's so little credibility or faith in the institution right now. This just makes things worse.
And to be clear, we bring up the Congresswoman because she has publicly announced, like, I bought these, and you can make the case, good on her for announcing it quicker than anyone. And I got to imagine there's going to be a lot more coming here that we're going to find out, lawmaker X or, Congresswoman Y, whoever they are, was flipping stocks during all this volatility.
It's right, and Mick makes a great point about the trust in government, right? I mean, you have members of Congress who were on the phone with the president the night before, and then the day of, hours before he announced his tariff rate, he has a tweet or a truth about, buy stocks, it's going up. That breeds a lot of distrust within the government of people thinking like politicians.
I could say no. I could say I wouldn't have done it, but that's not how Donald Trump works, right? And I doubt very seriously he was trading stock. That's not the point. The point is there's enough reasons right now for Americans not to trust Congress. Why give them an extra one? Why would you want to trade in stocks? I mean, there's plenty of things you could do for a living other than being in Congress. If you are banned from buying stocks, if that really makes you not want to be in Congress, then don't come to Congress. So it's a very small ask for them to simply stop doing it.
By the way, there are folks who track Nancy Pelosi's portfolio.
And she does great.
She does better than great. Yeah. Her portfolio performance in 2024 is up 71%.
I think you can actually buy an ETF that tracks
they track it. There are things out there that basically say, if you want to be like Nancy Pelosi, the former Speaker of the House, here's how you do it.
Well, I mean, the market did have a pretty great run during the end of the Biden administration.
I know, but not 71%, though.
And in defense of Pelosi, and how often do you hear me say that? Never. Her husband's really good at this. It's what the man does for a living, and you have to disclose the trades from your spouse as well.
AOC, I've been hearing some interesting chatter on the floor. Disclosure deadline is May 15th. We're about to learn a few things. Did you ever hear this on the House floor?
Oh, sure.
Like people buying, like congressmen, whoever?
Oh, yeah, before I got here, I can't remember. Was it Spencer Baucus was trading bank stocks during hearings on the global financial crisis? But my point to people who say that that's illegal, it's not. It's public information. All of the financial media in the world are sitting in the front row doing the exact same thing for their readers and so forth. But again, it just looks wrong.
All right, Nick, Adam, see you on the other side of the break. Don't go anywhere if you don't mind. Coming up, speaking of markets, another wild day. But the president today trying to offer some reassurance.
And it's all going to work out very well. I think it's going to work out really very well. But we're in good shape.
So was this basically his strategy all along, or is the White House just winging it? And did you see what happened at the Masters? How one little girl and the video of what happened yesterday out there on the course. Stay with us.
The biggest trials in America, and Banfield is all over them. Lori Vallow, Karen Reed, Rachel Morin, the Menendez brothers. The case isn't closed until you've seen it on Banfield. Weeknights 10/9 Central, only on NewsNation.
This is NewsNation with a trust rating higher than any of our competitors. NewsNation is proud to be America's fastest growing cable news network. See for yourself at joinnn.com.
the period of uncertainty we're in, they know that your vision will move us into an age of prosperity for all Americans.
Nobody knows what the heck is going to happen next, given the chaos of this administration.
All right, so was it vision or is it chaos? That was the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, at today's cabinet meeting alongside President Trump, followed by the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer, saying nobody knows what's going to come next. So what is it? The closing bell on Wall Street just a couple hours ago may show that yesterday's surge was a short-term reaction to the news of a tariff pause, or at least a throttling down, I guess is a good way to describe it. The market clearly indicating today this thing ain't over. But it seems yesterday's victory lap was not over for the president either.
We had a big day yesterday. There'll always be transition difficulty, but we had in history, it was the biggest day in history, the markets. So we're very, very happy with the way the country's running.
All right, so now as I asked a reasonably intelligent person with decent insight into the mind of President Trump, what his plan was regarding for the tariff hikes, followed by the massive pause, combined with the 125, now 140-something% tariff on China. They told me it's strategic ambiguity. But the market clearly doesn't like ambiguity, and today's dip certainly felt like this was the whole plan, the plan the whole time narrative pushed by the Trump administration yesterday. So what is it? With me now, Mick Mulvaney, NewsNation contributor, former Trump White House chief of staff. Adam Hodge, former communications director for the DNC. Jessica Anderson, former budget official in the first Trump administration. Brad Howard is a Democratic strategist. Hello to you all. Thanks for being here. Nice to have you all in.
Hi, hi.
That was you, sir. Strategic ambiguity.
I want you to know that the teleprompter said a very intelligent person. Reasonably intelligent. Goodness gracious. Look, I don't think this was the plan from the beginning, but I think that's fine. The only problem I've got with him saying it was the plan is I think it undermines Besson's credibility a little bit because nobody believes it. But again, that's neither here nor there. They're on the course now. I think we know one answer, which is the tariffs are there for negotiating purposes, except for China. Put China in a different category. We've talked for a week on this show. Are they there to stay there? Are they the be-all, end-all? Or are they a means to an end? They are now clearly a means to an end.
So I can give you a couple different headlines, right? Like I just wrote a couple down. Swiss drug maker Novartis plans to spend $23 billion in expanding 10 facilities in the U.S. You would say, see, told you so, right? But then I also see Andy Jassy, the CEO of Amazon, basically saying prices. And so it seems like we're in this kind of who knows phase. And no matter who the incumbent is, if you're in a who knows phase, Jessica, that can't be good.
Well, I have two thoughts here.
Okay.
The first is what is clear from the beginning is that President Trump had to put forward a full economic recovery that that he said would include tariffs plus tax cuts plus the deregulatory agenda plus American energy production. All of that is now moving, right? The House is finally moving the budget reconciliation package. It's quickly heading to the president's desk. So I think there's a lot more that's actually going to come once he signs tax relief.
I think you're kind of making my point, right? Because it's kind of in this phase right now of like.
And it took a really long time, Blake, for the economic damage to be done in this country, and it's going to take a long time to unpack that and actually get us on the upswing when it comes to our economic agenda.
Here was President Trump earlier today. I'll get your reactions on the other side.
Everybody wants to come and make a deal, and we're working with a lot of different countries, and it's all going to work out very well. I think it's going to work out really very well.
You used to work in the trade representative's office, so you know a thing or two about this. What if he's right? What if it works out?
Right now, the market is clearly saying they have really some real questions about whether it is going to work out. I mean, you have 145% tariffs on China, 10% across the board for all the countries around the world. And so what you saw over the last few days is businesses actually trying to speak up, saying this is a real problem for us. We can't plan in this environment. We can't make long-term investment decisions. And it doesn't actually address some of the bigger problems we have with China and the trade landscape. So
you give him credit for doing what he's doing on China, though?
No, I think that's not strategic at all because you've made all of our allies and partners that you need to deal with their overcapacity on steel, aluminum, cars, solar. None of them are on board with us. So we're doing this alone. You can't solve the China problem alone.
Look, I'll just say very simply that this president ran on reducing inflation and lowering costs. No matter what you say, you can onshore companies, and that's a noble effort. We learned that after COVID, that we need to make more things here in America, but that's not a way to get to the lowest prices. And so inflation is going to be, I think, a lagging problem for this president. It's not something that so far we've seen any plan to really address. And it may eventually come down over a few years, but by nature of prioritizing American-made goods over imported goods, it's going to lead to higher prices than we were before, and I think that's going to be a political problem for the president.
The thing I've been watching so much, though, is just how people have found their voice. You've seen CEOs and companies start to speak out because they see the risks to the bottom line. They really understand this is a really unsteady time for the markets, and there does not seem to be a plan to get out of it. So how do you plan as a business?
I think there is a plan to get out. He needs to do a deal. Okay, he needs to do a deal of some import soon. I understand the Vietnamese delegation was in Treasury today.
And it needs to be public.
And that's exactly right. Again, in this town, if you're smart, you will know that actions speak louder than words. And they need some action.
I think the concern there, though, I think from Democrats is that he had a deal with Canada and Mexico that he negotiated himself. It's called, USMCA, and then he just blew it up with these tariffs. And so it's like, yes, we may get a deal, but again, the market wants to know what's the answer for the long term. Even if there is a deal, he may lose focus and not enforce it, or he may sabotage it again. I think that's some of the uncertainty driven into the market.
What I'd like to see is more ribbon cuttings for companies that are opening up here, more examples of the Trump administration in hard hats at auto worker shops in Michigan. I'd like to see us take this conversation out of Washington, put it back into America. And I'm not actually convinced this is a political suicide for the president when it comes to turning out low propensity, first-time Trump voters. That's going to be the ticket.
Well, they're going to notice high prices for sure.
Do they feel like things are getting better or not?
If you made this point, today was not a good day in terms of the markets.
No.
But I wonder if you think today was actually a good day for the president, given that what they did in the building behind us.
Oh, sure.
And to Jessica's point of them now delivering with, in the next few months, they might be able to see tax cuts, no tax on this.
The Trump pitch from the beginning is look to the whole package, look to the whole agenda. And tariffs are part of it, but then you've got tax reform, you've got deregulation, you've got energy policy. Give that a chance to take hold. If the 90 days does anything, it lets the other things sort of catch up. If you sort of had to do it over in your own mind, would you have done the tariffs later and started on dereg or tax reform first? Maybe, but that's water under the bridge.
And as someone who went through the reconciliation process when Democrats were the majority, that budget vote was huge. Yeah. That is a huge political win for the president and for congressional Republicans.
And they may not have done it had tariffs had not been forcing them to take action so quickly on the Hill.
This is something that I think, I actually wrote a piece in the Hill about this. Like, there's a tax trade-off here that you saw in the first administration where they could get the tax cuts done first, and then they could swallow the tariffs. Companies could deal with that. This time around, the market's tanking because they can't fully bake in the tax cuts, and they're dealing with the pain of the tariffs right now. Amazon is paying tariffs on those goods right now.
I think there's one message today from the stock market. It's that this whole thing is not a switch. You can't turn it on and turn it off. There has been some damage done to the American economy in the last week. Right or wrong, agree or disagree, and they're going to have to fix it. Now, you do fix it with tax reform. You fix it with good trade deals. There are ways to fix it. But, yeah, you take a little bit of a victory lap today, but now you get back to work down to the White House to fix things.
Democrats are struggling a little bit with the response here because traditionally our base has been the party of tariffs.
That's right.
And with labor, and labor is split on this issue as well. So the Democratic response is going to be an issue to watch. I think they're all in unison that this tactic is not working and will not work. But on the issue of the appropriateness and use of tariffs, still a big divide in the Democratic Party.
I got to run, but I'm curious of this, Mick. You've been in this town for a few days. You talked to a lot of folks.
Yeah.
Your big takeaway is what?
The bond markets are very jittery. And I've been saying for 15 years that sooner or later the bond vigilantes are going to punish us for going $15 trillion in debt, then 20, then 30, now 36.
You think it's here?
I don't know.
It could get worse with the tax package, too.
If it is,
but that might be why the president put the pause.
I think he said that.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Berman.
You got it. Extremely
You didn't say anything about my tie today.
Looking good.
Thanks, guys.
I stole a tie from him this week.
Coming up here on the Hill, whether you're a golf fan or not, how we could all learn a little lesson from the Masters. My take is next, and Elizabeth Vargas reports coming up on the other side. She's joined by Mark von Ronnenkampf, the former analyst at the Department of State and Defense, to talk about new UFO videos, 7 o'clock Eastern, right here on News Nation. My take, other side of the break. I'm Blake Berman, and you're listening to America's fastest growing cable news network, News Nation. News for all America. One of the best days of the year as the 2025 Masters is officially underway. And as the first day came to a close, did you happen to catch this moment during yesterday's par 3 contest? It's a family-friendly competition. The pro golfers can have their kids, spouses out there on the course, serving as their caddies, or really doing whatever they want. The golf course became a playground, and would you look at that? There were so many kids participating. Rory McIlroy's 4-year-old daughter getting in on the action. Poppy stealing the show with that 25-foot putt on the par 3 course. Cool stuff. All right, now to my take. With all the market whiplash back and forth these last couple days, how could you miss it? On your phone, your feed, your group chat, wherever. Turns out you actually could have missed some of it. I saw this story in the Wall Street Journal this morning. Gave me a bit of a laugh to start off my day. Here it was. They went to the Masters. They ditched their cell phone. Then the market went completely crazy. You see, the famed Masters tournament does not allow attendees to bring their cell phones onto the property. Lucky enough to score a ticket, leave your cell phone behind. So for those at yesterday's practice round, no clue about the tariffs and the market turnaround. As one attendee, or patron as they are known, told the Journal, had they been at home, they would have been glued to their screen with the market movement. But at Augusta, they said, quote, people ought to detox from their phones. Now, where exactly phones should and should not be allowed is also a political conversation. For example, should they be banned in our kids' schools? Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. saying in today's cabinet meeting that he is going to look at just that.
We are working with governors across the country to get cell-to-cell or bell-to-bell legislation to restrict the use of cell phones in schools, which again dramatically impacts academic performance.
Now set that aside for a moment, as that is a much, much bigger conversation. But for now, Augusta is a reminder of many things, including the need every once in a while to put down the phone, to stop and smell the roses, or in their case, the azaleas. And that's my take. I thank you for watching The Hill tonight. It has been another huge day here in Washington. Tariffs, the story, right? But up on the Hill, House Republicans got their act together. Another step in trying to pass the president's agenda. What comes tomorrow, I don't know, but I will see you here